You're listening to the Word Slinger Podcast, episode 36, Caffeinated Entrepreneurship with Brendan Hufford. That's good Java.
Writing is difficult, but it is worth the effort. Kevin Tomlinson can help you develop a daily writing habit that will let you write your book, improve your website, and build or grow your business. Visit kevintomlinson.com and start writing now.
It's the Word Slinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented Pants Optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger.
Word Slinger.
Hey everybody, this is Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger, and I don't know if I've told you, I do know I've told you this before, but I actually listen to that intro every single time I sit down to do the show. It's kind of like the trigger that gets me in gear, gets me in Word Slinger headspace. So, hey, here's something.
When it seems like nothing else will, the fresh mountain-grown aroma of Folgers coffee can really get you out of bed.
Kiss the kids are up. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your coffee.
Now, be honest, you just sang along with that theme, right? I know that I did, at least mentally. We're not actually talking about coffee today, but because of the theme of this guy's podcast, I wanted to kind of riff on that, play with it a little. But today we're talking to Brendan Hufford, who has the Coffee and Entrepreneurs podcast, which is one I started listening to kind of recently, and I've gone through the back catalog and caught up on everything. But this guy is doing it right, man. It's essentially, it's a lot like this show. So if you like the Word Slinger podcast, you're going to love this show as well. So go check it out. You can find it at entrepreneursandcoffee.com and on iTunes. If you search Entrepreneurs and Coffee, he's got a very familiar looking logo style. We won't mention what it looks like, but go check it out. So I think you can probably guess. There's something interesting about coffee, man. It just, I kind of get why he went with that as a theme, because coffee and entrepreneurship just kind of seems to go together, right? I mean, how many times have you seen a couple of guys sitting in like a Starbucks, just kind of hashing out the plans for world domination, and they got their laptops up, they got their cups in their hands, they're animated, they're energized, and that's the beauty of that sort of, that environment. It inspires collaborative thinking. So, which is a lot like what I want to do with this show. I want this to be our little coffee break together, and I think that's what Brendan wants too. So I'm not going to keep you from him. He's talked to some amazing people, and he himself is pretty amazing. So I think you'll dig this story and take some inspiration from it. Hang around after the show. I got questions. I got other little announcements. Something very cool that you're definitely going to want to be a part of if you have any inclination to write, to be an author. So definitely hang out after the show, and we will get you set up. So, all right, this is Brendan Hufford. Everybody, listen in and tune in afterward for the final word. Hey everybody, I'm here today with somebody that I recently started listening to. And I say recently, for maybe the past 3 weeks, and I've gone back and, binged, listened to all of his back episodes. But I've got Brendan Hufford here, who is an entrepreneur and a podcaster. He's the host of the Entrepreneurs and Coffee podcast, and those are 2 words that I really love. 3 words I love, all in one place. So, how are you, Brendan? How you doing?
I'm awesome, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me on for a chat.
No problem, man. I'm glad you're here. You're blowing stuff up, man. You're getting guests on your show that I've been chasing for a while, so I'm pretty impressed with your acumen there. You want to tell me like a couple of the more recent guests? I could bring some up, but you know who you've had on.
Well, my 2 most recent guests were Gary Vaynerchuk and Pat Flynn, who are 2 people that mean a tremendous amount to me. So they're people that even if nobody else cared, I would probably be so happy to have on.
No
And that
kidding.
was really cool.
Yeah, I listen to Pat's podcast all the time, and everybody knows Gary Vee. I mean, practically, he's a legend. So, very cool, man. So, why don't you tell me a little about the podcast itself, like how this gets started?
So really, it started all with me kind of being, I guess, Gary Vaynerchuk calls it entrepreneurial DNA, and it's like, I don't like that because it makes people feel like they can't be an entrepreneur. And I guess it's all in the way he defines it. An entrepreneur are the crazies. They're the ones who are like all at the end of the spectrum and just can't function working for other people and whatever else. And that's fine if he wants to, define it that way. But I guess my whole life I've been very entrepreneurial. And I kind of was nurtured away from that just by whatever society, parents, go to college, get a job. And I did all that, and I had a job, and I wasn't super happy. And I discovered Pat Flynn, and then because of Pat, I discovered Gary, and I started building some websites. I built a jiu-jitsu gi review website, and then I started my own company. It's called OK Kimonos. It's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu apparel company. And just still continuing to be a teacher and really enjoying the art of teaching. Don't get me wrong, I really can't stand most days working in a school.
Yeah.
And I have a very good supervisor now. I didn't in the past, but I do now. And I'm an assistant principal now. But I still have this strong desire to tell stories and build relationships, which is really all that teaching is. And I've been a fan of podcasts for so long that it just seemed like a really great way to share what I have done. What I've actually, I'm not just reading it online and regurgitating what I've read.
Right.
This is stuff that I've actually done and things I've actually experienced, and I'm just sharing my stories. And a podcast is a great way to do it. And I feel like I'm an entrepreneur, and I freaking love coffee too.
Yeah.
So we have that in common. And yeah, it just seemed like a very, very natural fit.
A lot of people don't know this, but I actually I taught for several years, and I actually have a master's in education. I was in that environment for a while.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I know the environment you're in. Maybe not as cold as yours. You're in Chicago. Maybe it's not as cold.
Right. But you guys are sweating in class.
Yes.
Which I would wager, we were joking about that at home, but at work, I think I would probably prefer to be cold versus like sweating in class.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, at least you can move around, get the kinetic heat going, right?
Oh man, well, one year a bunch of crazy vagrants from the area where my school is stole all the copper wiring. They somehow scaled to the top of the school, ripped open all the air conditioners, and stole all the copper wiring out of it. So we had no air conditioning for like the last 2 months of school. And while it's really cold here, it also gets super hot in the summer. So it was like in June, and we're hitting 80s and 90s with no air conditioning, and you open up the windows, it's just hot air coming in. And I have to, because of the rules of my school, like I have to wear a dress shirt and dress pants every single day. And I'm like just walking around with my elbows glued to my sides because I pointed to something in the room, and all the kids were like, ew. Yeah, and I was like, oh, well, whatever, man. Yeah, I'm all pitted out. It was the worst. I'm not a small man, Kevin. I'm like 6'1" and like 215 pounds. And I sweat a lot in that type of heat.
I hear you, man. I'm right there with you.
Sure.
I'm not 6'1", but I do have the girth and the prolific sweating. So
whatever, man. There's a strength and conditioning coach that I love, whose name's Mark Ripto, and he says, in the animal kingdom, they don't judge animals by age into adulthood; they judge them by weight.
Okay.
And he said, in the human race, all adult males weigh over 200 pounds.
Yeah, that's
I was
right.
like, that's awesome.
Yeah, we're victorious then.
Right.
So, all right. So you've been doing how long have you been doing the podcast?
Just since January. Okay. So a solid, I guess, 4.5 months, 3.5 months. And
that always kills me when I ask people questions like that about their podcast, because I started doing mine back in September, and I'm looking around, and here you are. You're obviously much more successful at it than I am. I'm trying to. That's why you're here, man. I want to crack the code and figure out your secret so that I can.
I'm happy to talk about it. I'll tell you everything.
Hey, tell me everything, man. That's why we're here. Part of what this podcast is about, most of what this podcast is about, I like to talk to people and get their story, mostly about how they're doing what they do, the business that they have, how it relates to their life, and I want people to be able to learn from that. I want to learn from that. So, tell me everything. Like what, how do you pull it all together? What's a typical podcast episode like for you?
As far as like from beginning to end, I guess they've all come together super organically. Some are, I have a good friend who kind of re-taught me how to use Twitter. I had kind of forgotten in the last few years, and I say that kind of facetiously, but really I just mean that I was using it very much as push media. Here's my posts, I'll schedule them, and I'll respond if you respond to me, and I'm not going to actually go on there and talk to anybody. And he's like, no, that's not what this is for. Like, go on there and actually start talking to some people and see what happens. And I started using Twitter that way and just engaging people and using the search function. And I started chatting with Hal Elrod and Chris Brogan and a bunch of people. And if you go on there, you can tell, just follow somebody and see the type of posts they make. And if they're posting every 10 minutes and you look at their tweets and they don't have any @ replies on there, then A, I'm definitely going to unfollow you. And B, I know that you don't talk to people on Twitter, so I don't have any reason to try and talk to you.
Right.
But a lot of people do, and you'd be surprised. So that's how I got Hal Elrod and Chris Brogan. I just asked. As far as Pat Flynn, I was on episode 49 of the Smart Passive Income podcast back in the day with no intention of ever having, that was 2 years ago. I had no intention of ever having my own podcast or anything, and I didn't even know that I was going to do OK Kimonos at that point. I was just running a little community website for the gear reviews. And so I've known Pat for years. And I mean, a lot of it just comes together. So, I got an email from Gary Vaynerchuk's head of business development and said, hey, I like your podcast. Gary likes it. Do you want to have him on? And I was like, yeah. Like, tell me the time and date. I'm not going to work that day.
Yeah.
I don't care. This isn't going to make me any money, but it's just like one of those things that I'm very passionate about. And I think along the way, I have a tremendous amount of hustle and work ethic. And I think I've just been very, very fortunate that this is something that Hal Elrod told me in literally my first interview I ever did, is to focus on the process and not the results. So as far as, I'm not making any money from the podcast or anything like that. I'm just really focused on the process of continuing to do the best that I can with what I have. I don't have like the most amazing audio setup or anything like that. I don't have the most amazing technology. I literally took a page out of Tim Ferriss's book. He writes about it in the 4-Hour Chef. He says when you're learning to cook, you should use paper plates and plastic utensils early on so you don't have the intimidation of cleaning up afterwards.
Oh, that's brilliant, yeah.
So he looks for easy wins when you're trying to learn something new.
Yeah.
Well, I said if I'm going to learn how to podcast, I'm going to get as many easy wins. So I just have a simple USB microphone with earbuds, and that's it.
All right.
I don't want to learn all the audio yet
because
I want to focus on getting it out there and making something and, communicating with people. As far as the whole, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it sounds at least as good as my podcast, so you're doing something right.
I'm just learning as I go, right? Like I was told a long time ago that you should look back at the first things you make in any type of venture and be disgusted.
Yeah.
You should be like, oh, I should delete that so nobody could see it. But with what we're doing with the podcast and stuff, it's so important. I remember I looked back at John Lee Dumas's episode 1 and 2 and that dude's done 700, 800 episodes.
Yeah, he's prolific.
That guy works and the thing is, people think what he does isn't hard. Like, that guy works 80 hours a week. He's a good person too. And I think that's a rare combination. So I listened to his episode 1 and 2, and I say this with a lot of support in what I'm saying, but they were terrible.
Yeah.
They were robotic. He stumbles over his words. You can tell he's just reading off a script. He doesn't do any follow-up questions. They're bad, but they are his chapter 1. So if your chapter 1 sounds like his chapter 1, that's okay. And that's been a really big thing that I've taken from a lot of stuff. So if it doesn't sound great, My audio is crap on interviews. You know, my Gary Vaynerchuk interview, he's like outside and there's like helicopters going overhead and lawnmowers. And I'm like, whatever, I'm leaving this. It's so
What can
raw
you
and
do,
authentic.
though? That's the guest, though. Like, you can't control where the guest calls in, right?
Right. And I tried to edit it and it sounded like we were talking to each other like on the inside of a TIE fighter. It was awful.
Yeah, I've had worse, believe me. And for some reason, most of the time, or a lot of the time, the guy who does like yard work for me shows up for whatever reason at exactly the moment that I'm starting to interview somebody important. Like he's probably out there right now because I'm talking to you. So even even at 7:00 at night. So so do you? I mean, speaking of scripting, by the way, do you script your show?
You know, I did originally. The way that I was taught to do it, I'm just kind of very, I guess you could say, like classically trained. My podcast coach, I'm a very big advocate of coaches. It's hard at first because you're probably going to get burned and you're going to pay people who kind of suck. But it's good because and I've paid 2 coaches that I didn't think were very good fits for me. But my podcast coach, his name's Jeff Brown, and he's from the Read to Lead podcast. He's fantastic. And he's like, I would classify him as like an old school radio guy. Like he's, I would encourage everybody to just check out in iTunes, the Read to Lead podcast. As soon as you hear his voice, you're like, oh, he's a radio guy for sure. He's fantastic. But he scripts everything out word for word. And that's what he taught me to do. And when you're starting out, before you have interview chops, and I'm not saying I'm great or anything at all, but before you start to get a better feel for it, I really advise that people do. So worst case scenario, just go to the next question and just read it and it'll sound great. You know, you can edit out awkward silence and all of that other stuff, but that kind of keeps the flow of things going. It keeps the timing down, and you're a lot less nervous when you can always just go right back to the script. So I did it first, but now it's been a lot less. Part of that's probably just due to me having less time. But, you know, the other thing I noticed too is that when I script a ton out, there's other avenues I want to go down and things I want to ask about, and I don't even ask like half the questions.
Yeah, they're just there for backup, right? A safety net kind of thing.
Yeah, or it'll be, and I just love learning about people. You know, I'm a fan of podcasts, so the fact that I have to listen to some more podcasts to prep for an interview it's like a reward. So I have an interview coming out probably tomorrow with Sean Stevenson, and he's from the Model Health Show, and he is a freaking genius when it comes to especially health for entrepreneurs. And I remember I had a ton of questions written out for him, and I didn't even use most of them. But what's cool is because I had them written out, he would say something, and I maybe didn't want to follow up, but it tied in perfectly with like 3 questions down. So I would just ask that question next. And it's good. It gives you a lot of material to pull from, depending on, kind of like how comics have a ton of material, and depending on how the audience is reacting and feeling, they can pull from different stuff.
Yeah, I like that analogy, actually. That's kind of the way I think of it, too. It's like one big improv for the whole hour. So, you mentioned Twitter earlier. So I use Twitter all wrong. I know this. And what's sad is I tell clients all the time how they should be using Twitter, and I don't follow my own advice. But so how do you keep up with all that with your full-time job? Because I know they're not letting you, hang out in the halls with your phone so you can respond to tweets, right?
No, they don't. But with as far as responding, I just kind of have to batch respond. I'll just go on. I use I'm a huge fan for scheduling social media. I love Buffer. Not just because of the ease of use and the user interface, but I also agree with Buffer as a company. So, and their ethics and their values. So I like them for that. But to respond to tweets, I just use Hootsuite. And because I have multiple Twitter accounts for different things, so I can look at them all at once on there. But I just pull the mentions and I can just refresh it really swift, respond to everybody, and then keep it moving. That's the easiest way for me to respond. But as far as sending it out or whatever else, man, I guess my best advice is if you want to get more done, you need to really audit your time. I'm a big fan of the idea that most millionaires don't know who got voted off the island.
Yeah.
Unless, most millionaires don't know how this Walking Dead season ended.
Yeah.
Right. And my goal is not to be a millionaire, but I just think it shows priorities.
Right. Yeah. You make time for what's important. You set aside everything that's not important. Right.
Absolutely. And Facebook, because I need to do it to work and because it's such a great way to engage, but they're geniuses. And I'm not like trying to put my tinfoil hat on or anything like it's a conspiracy, but they make their money by getting you to click on ads.
Yeah.
So they don't want you to leave Facebook. They are literally through a insane algorithm that I don't even understand. They post, like when I open Facebook, they are showing me things that are going to suck me into that news feed and keep me scrolling. And they understand like, oh, he scrolled past this. Well, that hits these markers, so don't show him that again. Blah, blah, whatever. And it's really hard because I have work to do and I'll lose a solid 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'll even in my head as an entrepreneur, like rationalize it. Like I'm engaging with people. These are my friends. These are my fans. These are connections. I need to keep up with them.
Yeah.
But really, I'm just like doing whatever.
Right. You're vegging. I mean, I do the same thing. And 20 minutes would be actually a good day for me if that's all the time I ended up wasting. So I spend way too much time on Facebook. And I do. I justify it.
I have a sticker right here, a Post-it note that I've had on my computer for the last couple of years that says wasting time online is wasting time with your son and wife.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And because I do most of my work when they're sleeping, like right now I have an amazing wife. My wife Liz is putting my son to sleep, but usually I get up at 3 a.m. every single day. It's how I get a lot of my work done. And because they're sleeping, I don't really feel like I'm losing time with them, but I imagine that I do. I imagine that I hear him upstairs, and I imagine that he's waiting for me to get done.
Yeah.
And if I'm just sitting here screwing around, like that really puts it into perspective for me.
Yeah. So that's your why.
Oh, 110%. That and just the idea of servant leadership, just wanting to serve people. Money and stuff will come, and I understand it's a really hard pill to swallow, like when you're not making money and you need to.
Yeah.
But I also think that by serving people and finding ways to make money by serving and having a very servant leadership attitude, it's a lot easier to make money and you can sleep better at night.
Yeah. It is interesting, by the way, because I don't make any money on the podcast right now. Not really. Little bits here and there. There's a Patreon campaign. Some people are funding. Thank you, everybody. But all this stuff is service. Like it's a labor of love, and I hate using that phrase, but it really is. And it's been tremendous to me and helped me grow as an entrepreneur just doing that work. Do you feel like the work you're doing, like with your podcast, I don't know as much, and I apologize, I don't know as much about OK Kimono, and I want you to talk about that. But from the perspective of your podcast, I mean, what's the primary goal there? Is it to serve the entrepreneur, or is it personal learning, or some combination?
Well, I'm actually doing a webinar later this week just about starting a side business.
Okay.
And those are people I'm really passionate about serving, especially dads who feel the need to provide for their families and hate their job and hate their life or whatever. And, really want to have a little more leverage and a little more money and a little more time, whatever their goals are. But having a side business is something that would really help them in the same way that it helped me. I felt super trapped in my job. And I'm now working harder than I've ever worked in my whole life, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of dads out there that feel the same way. So I'm super, super passionate about serving them with getting the information out. And I'm not started, like, you notice I didn't name my podcast like Side Businesses for Dads. I wasn't, but I think the way that I speak and the way that I articulate the things that are important to me, like my wife and son, it appeals more to those people. And it just you kind of naturally attract that audience.
Yeah.
So that's kind of who I'm really interested in serving. As far as the podcast goes, I have a couple ideas. I've talked about this a little bit on my podcast. My BS meter is turned up so high for crappy coaches and people like that, crappy products. When you buy it and they talk about theory the whole time, and it's like, okay, I need steps. Like, what do I say?
Yeah.
What do I do? And that's what I want to, if I'm going to make something, if I'm going to do something, that's what I'm going to provide.
Yeah.
because these people don't have time. Like, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like you have to do an experiment in chemistry, and it's a 20-page document, and the last page tells you how to do the experiment.
Yeah.
That's a waste. Like, just give them the last page and like, let's do what we need to do. So that's what I'm passionate about. And I'll get into a little bit of that on my webinar and stuff with people, but I'm not trying to hit people over the head with stuff and whatever else. Here's the thing. I also hate, as much as people sell and stuff on podcasts or like have products, I think that's awesome. But the other thing that I don't like, and I heard this recently on a podcast, was somebody asking for something. I don't know. It wasn't a Patreon campaign. It was something else. If it was GoFundMe or whatever. But they said like every little bit helps. Like this is my only income comes from this podcast, and every little bit helps. And it, frankly, Kevin, I was super pissed because the podcast is amazing.
Yeah.
And you just sounded like a beggar.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm smart enough, but a lot of people are going to look at you and devalue what you're putting out there. Like, you should be a little bit more proud and value yourself a little bit higher than that, than to say things like every little, like I'm supposed to fund you out of like sympathy now because you're living like the dream life of not having to work a regular job. Like, if you're short on money, go get a job.
Yeah.
But if you're only running your podcast and then begging for money on it, like, I just don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a badass podcast like this guy does. Like, it's awesome, and I freaking love listening to it. But I don't know, just that attitude of like, please help me. No, man, you're doing something awesome for the world, and you should be a little bit more, conscious and confident in that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I kind of went off on a tangent.
No, and
because we were talking about Patreon, and I was like, you know what?
Yeah, and now I feel bad because I know I've uttered that phrase. Not this is my only income or any of that. I'm not in that boat. But the every little bit helps kind of phrase. I have said that, but I think now I want to rethink it because I agree with you.
Like, what you're doing is amazing, and like, you're really good at this. And I think that it's just saying like, look, if this helps you in any sort of significant way, and you want to support it and you want to keep it going,
yes.
Like, here's how you can do that.
Yeah. And that's the
Tim Ferriss says it all the time. He's like, my book club is what's supporting this podcast. Like, if you want to check it out, go here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, though, that what he does that's remarkable and different, that makes it not begging, is that he's offering something additional to the podcast. Like, hey, support the podcast by going and learning more and growing and being a part of this community. That's the way it feels to me. So I like that. Yeah. So I'm going to change my approach on that, actually, because I think that the overhead is what I always bring up. Like, hey, this helps with overhead. If I'm making more on the podcast, then I don't have to take on another client or something, and I can dedicate more time to making it better. But even that may be begging. So,
yeah, I mean, why? I guess why not? And I understand. I think I would just stick more on the side of, and it's probably my brash arrogance. It's probably why I'm like, I super love Gary Vaynerchuk, because I think he and I are very similar in this. But I just feel that, you're doing something awesome.
Yeah.
And people should recognize that. And if they don't, like, I wouldn't tell people to like screw off or anything at all. But I would tell people like, this is really good. And if you're getting something out of this, it's free. Like, this is free, and you can choose to pay if you want.
Right.
But I definitely don't think that as podcasters, or especially podcasters that have chops, because there's a million podcasters starting. Most podcasts don't make it past episode 7. Right. I think is like the common statistic. I think Cliff Ravenscraft is the one who told me that, and he's right, because my first podcast stopped at like episode 7.
Yeah.
And I just think that I'm trying to really define it. I guess I haven't really articulated this before, which is why I'm stumbling a little bit.
No, it's good. We're discovering together.
Right. I just think that I was so frustrated at the time. I remember cringing, just going, "Oh, you went there. Why did you do that? You're so much better than that." Like, why aren't people should just be clamoring to fund you because they love it, not because you made them feel bad.
Right.
Like, I would rather have people be pumped to do it than like, oh God, this poor guy. Like, you're not a poor guy. Like, you're podcasting. You have internet access. Like,
Right.
these are, we're doing okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm on board because I think, and I'm struggling to articulate this as well. Okay. So to me, it is, you're doing something good. You're bringing value. You're bringing it. So you don't have to beg for support. Honestly, I've said a million times, I will do this podcast for free forever just because I love doing it and because of the people I meet, people like you and the people who do listen, who, write to me or whatever. I mean, they're amazing. So, yeah, that's enough. But the money side of it just helps me do more of it and do it better. So I'm on board with you.
Definitely. I think a really cool thing to do would, I think, using Tim Ferriss as a model, like finding out something you can add, right?
think
Like,
that's
they'll
brilliant.
get something. But the problem is, the other thing is that when they first started with audiobooks.com and Audible, I think pretty much everybody has their free Audible book at this point.
Yeah.
And probably have, maybe I've done this, maybe I haven't, created fake email addresses to get other ones once they've already gotten their one free one. I don't know. I heard about that somewhere. That you could do that. But I think everybody has them. So like, that's kind of played out. But I think trying to find even just a sponsor that your audience would really like, and then just approaching that sponsor and saying, look, you don't have to pay me anything, but I want to set up as an affiliate,
Right.
where if I can bring value to you guys can return the favor a little bit. And I think that would probably be super valuable, because then the audience gets a cool discount that they might not be able to get otherwise, and then you get a little bit of kickback on that. So it's kind of cool.
Do you have sponsors for your show?
No.
I haven't heard anybody. No?
No, I don't. I've talked to a couple different companies so far, and it's not that they weren't a good fit, but when I do advertising on my show, I'm very passionate about doing it in a way similar to how Alex Bloomberg did it on Startup. Very native, very much interviews and things like that, funny stories and silly things.
Yeah.
Versus just like, read the script. And they're like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and need you to read the script. And I'm like, I don't think this is a good fit.
Yeah.
People would hear it in my voice. I mean, like, listen, Kevin, we're talking right now. Can you picture me like reading a script for like Squarespace? Not that Squarespace approached me or I talked to them.
I
I'm
love
just,
Squarespace.
and I know. That's why as soon as I said it, I was like, that's not a good example, because I really like them. But can you imagine like anybody being like, hey guys, this is Brendan. Have you checked out Squarespace? No, they're going to know right away and just like hit that 15-second fast forward a couple times, or just turn the podcast off. And I don't want that.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, nothing to push them away. That brings up a good point, because I mean, one of the things that I strive for is that authenticity, and even that sounds kind of cheesy when I say it out loud. Maybe I should just keep that in my head. But that, to me, as I go along in this and I experiment and I try new things, I'm starting to discover the things that I don't like. And I almost regret that I tried that. Like, I've tried the ad spots and, and various things. And now I'm kind of rethinking all that. I mean, how do you balance, have you tried some things that you just wish you hadn't done on your show? You don't really experiment that much on your show from what I've gathered. Like, I don't think you use it as a proving ground for anything, do you?
I haven't changed the format of too much yet. I think that if I could do some things better, though, overall, I would release episodes on a more consistent basis.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and it very often ends up being Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah.
When I can get them out and stuff, or I have all these plans to do things and they just don't get done. So I think that's what I would change, is just be able to put it out on a more consistent basis. But as far as in the episodes, I've started really issuing very distinct, very kind of solid calls to action at the beginning and end. And I've experimented with a couple different things. I did a Seth Godin book giveaway.
Yeah.
I did, I'm really trying to build up kind of our Facebook group right now, just because it's, again, I'm very passionate about servant leadership, and I can better serve people when I can have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
And I think people look at joining an email list as being very spammy. like he's going to send me things and it's not going to be cool. So they won't necessarily sign up for an email list, but they'll join a Facebook group because then it's a kind of a two-way street. And I like also that, unlike email, now people who like my show can help each other.
Yeah.
Which I've seen a lot of, and I really, really enjoy that. That's probably been one of my biggest wins so far as like calls to action on the show.
Yeah. Speaking of Facebook groups, and I've heard you mention yours, and I haven't. Every time I hear it, I'm active on something, like I'm on my bike or I'm driving or whatever. So I never get to stop and go join your group. So what is the Facebook group you've been promoting?
Oh, if anybody wants to find it, it's just brendanhufford.com/community.
Okay.
And that'll take them right to the Facebook group. Just because we're entrepreneurs in coffee, I called it the Breakfast Club. I thought it's one of my favorite films of all time.
Yeah. Very cool.
And Facebook also has a little coffee mug icon, and I was like, this is perfect.
That's perfect. Yeah. Okay. I was going to run and join like while we were talking, but it looks like I've got stuff to fill out, so I'll save it for later.
Okay.
So, all right. Do you ever, you've got a lot going on because of your full-time job, you've got OK Kimono, you've got, the podcast. I mean, do you ever overschedule?
All the time. Oh, God, I'm the worst. I overbook myself all the time.
You agree to go on podcasts at 7:00 at night and...
And then I have a call. I'm like mentoring this guy that I'm going to talk to after this.
Yeah.
And then I'm still going to get up at 3 and I got to work out and I got to prep. I use this app called Todoist,
Okay.
Todoist. It's just like a task management app that I have. It connects to my phone, my iPad, and the computer, so I can look at it anywhere. But I mean, today it's 7:41 p.m. I still have 18 things to do. For sure, they're not getting done. But I mean, it pretty much keeps my whole life together.
Yeah.
Whether it's OK Kimono skis that I have to send out, or tax stuff that I have to take care of and review, or creating, I don't even know, just all sorts of things. Editing the podcast that's supposed to go out Monday and it's Tuesday night.
Yeah.
All of that stuff. So I overbook myself all the time. I'm the freaking worst. But the problem is that it all typically ends out okay, just because I am such a grinder and such a hustler that I will make stuff happen.
Yeah.
And it will all get done eventually. There's almost every day like 20 things on my task list. And as soon as the next day starts, there's 20 and it ends with 20, but they're all different things because just so much is going on every single day with all my different projects.
Yeah. Do you see a time where you're going to have to change your approach though?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of my weaknesses, I've just joined a mastermind group with a couple other awesome entrepreneurs, and we're kind of just talking about strengths and weaknesses. And one of my weaknesses that I've identified is just scaling.
Yeah.
Just giving away tasks. How silly does this sound? Like, nobody else is as good at printing out shipping labels as I am. Like,
Yeah.
I could totally give that away to somebody. And for some reason I haven't. It sounds so wild. It just sounds like such a crazy process. Like,
Yeah.
they're going to go to the website and put it in the USPS and then make a PDF and then email me the PDF so I can just print it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, that would actually save me a ton of time, but it just sounds like
But that
seems so
implies,
menial. Like, shouldn't I just do that myself?
Yeah, I mean, but that implies that you've already got your list of mundane, repeatable tasks, though, right?
Absolutely.
Because for me, the problem is that I don't have that list because it seems like I'm constantly improvising. So I need to make that list. So
I have to. If I don't make a list, my problem is, and this happened really early on, I couldn't be present.
Yeah.
Because I was constantly churning in my head. And when I was finally able to put it down on paper, I could be present with my wife and with my son. And that's, they're very much my why.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot more sense to do it that way.
So what do you think is one of the best things you've learned from your guests on the show?
So let's go. God, there's so much. It's so hard. Somebody else asked me that recently, and I'm like, really? Do you have another hour? Can we make like a part 2?
We can if you want. I don't
Let's
mind.
go. We might have to. I think if we just go super recently.
Okay.
With Pat and Gary. One of the best things I learned from Gary is just that I need to put out more for free.
Yeah.
He said, look at my model for business where I put out all this information for free and then I write a book every couple years.
Yeah.
And then he said, and look at you where you make, you have this really successful side business that you're going to do full time. But then if you offer like a $300 product, like, do you see how messed up my ratio is compared to your ratio? And I was like, yeah, I do see that. And I have enough respect for him to not just immediately be defensive and actually think about what he said. And I think he's right.
Yeah.
I think that I am missing, and I've known this for about 6 months, and I am missing out on a ton of traffic and exposure because I'm not on YouTube in any fashion.
Yeah.
And I think I'm really missing out on that. So that's something that I'm going to be working on. And that's a big thing that I learned from him, is that I just need to keep putting out more free stuff and it be my best stuff.
Yeah.
And then I think from Pat, one of the things that I learned was just that it's okay to show your faults. We talked about that on the show. And then we also talked about, he kind of reassured me that if you have something that could help somebody, you kind of have a duty to share that with them.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have a duty to overhype it or overcharge for it. But, if I could help a dad start a side business and he's able to pay for his kid's college education because of that, like, that, I kind of have a duty to help that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's life-changing, and changing someone's life that way. That's awesome.
Right. And it gave me a lot of reassurance and a lot of kind of, faith that as long as I'm keeping it genuine and like I've said a couple times, my BS meter's turned up so high that I don't think it's possible for me to do that.
Yeah.
I think I'll be fine.
Yeah. That's the funny thing is, you brought up, I listened to both those interviews, and the one with Gary Vee, that's exactly the stuff I took out of it too. So it really does resonate. That idea that, because I was spending an awful lot of time trying to figure out, like, what products can I develop that I can start making money on immediately. And this idea of throwing everything out there for free and then creating a paid product at the end, I mean, I think I like it better. It just fits better with my personality, I guess, and with what I want to accomplish. So, what about the marketing? Like, how are you marketing the podcast? And I haven't asked you about OK Kimono yet, but I mean, is this all kind of
together? I just went off on a tangent. So.
No, I don't know. I don't remember, but.
So
how
let's
about
start
marketing
with
in general then.
Sure. So with marketing, marketing the podcast, I'm just sharing it as much as I can, and then just really trying to engage with people any way that I can, whether it be email, whether it be through Twitter, whether it be on Facebook or in the Facebook group, like just trying to build relationships as much as I can, because podcasting is so immediate and it's so intimate.
Yeah.
But the problem is that most people do it while they're doing something else. Right. So you don't have their full attention to take action on things.
Like joining a Facebook group.
Right. But what's cool is the people who do take the time, they're like super like vetted into it. Like they're like hot leads, I guess you could say. And I'm not trying to sell anything to them, but they're like your super action takers. They're not going to just be like casual fans. Those are your diehard fans that actually get in touch with you.
Yeah.
So you can build that tribe of kind of evangelists very easily with a podcast if you just keep saying over and over again, talk to me, email me, whatever. So I've done it a lot through that. And then I'm not even sure. I think, I don't know. Like, I guess people just find it other ways. And I think the quality is enough that other people, guests who have been on are sharing it and things like that, which means a great deal to me as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about a podcast. It's much more shareable than even a blog post or, even video. I mean, I think video is very powerful. And since you listen to Pat Flynn, you've heard the success that he's having with his video podcast, which I'm like, that's bizarre. I never even thought about.
Yeah, SCI TV.
Yeah.
So
in that vein, I mean, podcasting is this intimate thing. Like, what kind of interaction are you getting with your listeners right now?
I get plenty of emails. I get plenty of tweets. I get people joining the Facebook group and messaging the Facebook page and things like that.
Yeah.
I think I feel like I'm getting very, very strong interaction. One thing I did recently was I just opened it up. I said, the first 10 people that go to this link. It was like brendanhufford.com/ I don't even know, call or something.
Mm-hmm.
And they schedule a time to talk to me on my scheduler app. I use Calendly. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And we could just chat on Skype or on the phone or whatever's easiest for you. And I set that up, and I think it filled up super fast. One lady told me that she literally, when she downloaded the episode, she pulled over on the side of the road to make sure that she got signed up for it. And that meant a lot to me. It meant a lot, because it's like, really, you interrupted your life for me. And that meant a ton. And I ended up talking to all of those people, and it was really, really helpful for me, not just because it showed me that I have chops to help people kind of cold, like on the spot. I can answer business questions and genuinely provide value. I always knew that I could, but it was cool to see it just in that like short interaction. But then also I was able to like really connect with and help people in my audience.
Yeah.
Which was really, really valuable.
That's outstanding. I love getting anything from my audience. So, I mean, it's such a thrill. And, I mean, it kind of makes you feel big for a minute there, but then you realize, it kind of humbles you too, because they're there because they appreciate something you created. It's very humbling in the end. So.
Definitely.
So I don't want to take, we're getting toward my wrap up here, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. And I really appreciate you being here, man. Was there anything you wanted to kind of pitch out there or promote while you've got the airtime? Like you don't have your own airtime.
Right. Well, I think, we talked about marketing and stuff. That's another way. I guess you could call it marketing. I guess you could also call it, I just like to talk to people.
Yeah.
And I think I have something to say, which helps.
Yeah.
But I try and just talk to people on other people's podcasts, and I just throw it out there and I offer. And if people are like, yeah, I'd be happy to have you on like you were, then we get to have an awesome conversation. Yeah. And, I make a new friend, and that's what, we could talk about, it's building relationships and it's relationship marketing. Screw that. Yeah. It's just called making friends.
Right.
Like I'd rather pay more to have my buddy in his business come pave my driveway than somebody I don't know.
Right.
Like you give business to your friends. And if we're friends, you're more likely to give me your business and I'm more likely to give you my business. So just make friends with people. Let's stop all of this crazy, scammy, spammy like ways of, go to networking events. Why don't you just go to a networking event and just try and be somebody's friend?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
That's like, let's get old school playground about it. Like, just give them things and be nice to them.
I've tried to be that internet marketing guy, where everything's a pitch and it's, I just can't. I've just decided, like recently, like within the past couple of weeks, I'm like, that's not me. I'm that guy who wants to make friends with everybody. I want to talk to guys like you, I want us to say, hey, what's going on with your business and what could I do that might help,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think you're right. I think that's exactly the right attitude, man. Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. And you okay. Now, before we start talking, you said, you could set up a link. Did you want to bring that up or, okay.
Sure. If anybody, well, first I mentioned my webinars a little bit. If people want to check that out, literally, no matter when you listen to this, if you go to brendanhufford.com/webinar, mm-hmm. They're free. You'll be able to sign up. I'm going to talk about a whole series of different things, so I'd rather not give it too much context. But if you go to brendanhufford.com/webinar, you'll be able to see what the next one is and then sign up for it if it's a good time for you. What else is cool is I have a ton of resources on my website I made just from trying to mentor and coach like my friends and all of these different people. That have kind of inquired with me through the podcast. I've made a lot of ebooks and PDF documents and stuff just for them to try and explain concepts that are a little difficult to explain just verbally. And if you go to brendanhufford.com/wordslinger, that you can get all of those.
Sweet. I love that you went with Wordslinger. So you heard him, everybody. You better go there and check that out and sign up for a webinar and check out the resources. Heck, I'm going to go there now. I'm going to even go while we're on air. Let me check it out. There we go. I know it
It's
doesn't
not set.
exist yet, dude. I'm just
Like,
messing with
damn
you.
it, Mike,
I'm
trying
just
to
I'm trying to
make this
set
real
I'm trying to
fast.
set up an environment here, okay?
Note to
So
self: don't make it up on air.
I'm just messing with you, dude. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Brendan, so much for talking to me, man. I appreciate it. I hope we get to chat a lot more in the future, man.
For sure, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me on and just giving me a chance to chat with you, but also for all of your listeners too. Thank you guys for taking the time to listen to us. I know your time's valuable, and I hope we've really, given you some ways to kind of improve your life just in our chat today.
Yep. And inside joke, he's been Brendan Hufford. So,
He's been Kevin.
all right. See you next week, everybody. And just like that, it's next week. Actually, it's funny because I do record these in advance because I have this goal of I want to fill every week with an interview if I can. Actually, I believe I can. I've been doing very well with this since I set that goal, and I've always got a guest kind of standing by. I've always got an interview kind of standing by. So it's been a lot of fun, and I ask people to. And this is a key. I think this is key to your success also in life. But I ask people. I ask for guests and suggestions and introductions, and they bring them to me. So, I have a question again this week that came in from email, and I dig this question actually. And it comes from Beth Brooks from Colorado Springs, Colorado, which is where my partner Nick Thacker happens to live. So if you see each other at a coffee shop or something, say hi. But Beth is writing to ask. She says, if I want to be a keynote speaker, do I need a book? She asked a couple of other questions in that in the email as well, but this was the core, and it all kind of comes back to this. But to answer that question, Beth, I think yes, absolutely. Now I'm a little biased because I am an author, I'm a novelist, but here's the deal: if you're a speaker, a coach, a consultant, or whatever, you're banking on your authority to make your living. And authority, in part, is credibility. And the thing about a book is it's instant credibility. I mean, if you stand up in front of a bunch of people and start talking about your topic, you carry a lot more weight when you've actually written something about that topic. And people see that. It's just a psychological thing. People just see it and glom onto it. It's automatic. We're programmed to think of people who write books as being intelligent and being, experts in their field, very knowledgeable about what they're talking about. And so a book becomes that sort of icon of instant credibility. And it's also, I've said this 1,000 times, a book is the ultimate business card. People will throw away your business card. They may not remember why they even have it, but people are just sort of averse to throwing away a book, just inherently averse. They don't want. Once you have a book in your hands, we've been programmed practically since birth to treat that with a kind of reverence. You don't just throw a book away. You might donate it. You might, give it to a friend. You might, leave it behind in a hotel room or whatever. But you don't throw it away. And so what happens is your book now has your name on it and your ideas in it. And it just sort of travels, and it exists. It sticks around. It reminds people of you. Plus, it's a way for Seth Godin says that when you're in the book business these days, you're no longer in the book business. You're in the souvenir business, and I believe that physical books are a way for people to sort of take the experience with them. So if you do a great talk, Beth, and you people are impressed by your ideas and by what you have to say, and they're inspired, they're going to want to take that with them. Now, the sad truth is, most people don't read these books. It's just a fact. I'm sorry. It is. It's a fact. I mean, think about all the free books or all the paid books you paid for that are just sitting on your shelf that you've never cracked open, or you maybe read the first few pages and set it aside. So now, as an author, it's kind of appalling to me. I want people to just be so engrossed by the first page of the book that they have to read to the last, but sometimes it just takes a while. I've had books. I had Tony Robbins' book, Unlimited Power. I had that on my shelf for years before I actually read the whole book. Like years. I bought that book to impress a girl, believe it or not. So, and then later read it and it really had an impact on my life. So that's my stance anyway. That's this word slinger's point of view on books. Of course, I would say that, but ask around. People will tell you it's a publish or perish world out there. If you've got a book, it makes you a lot more saleable. It gives you an additional revenue stream, for one. But it also just makes it easier for you to kind of open doors, because you can send a book to somebody and say, I just wanted to send this book so that you were aware of my work, and I wanted to use it as by way of introduction. And by the way, I speak on this topic, so if you ever have an event, let me know. And there you go, foot in the door. So use books, leverage them. They're a great marketing tool. So I hope that answered your question, Beth. And I know there were other questions in there, which I think I answered with some of the other stuff I was saying about marketing and introductions and all that. So, and feel free to contact me if you want to talk about, how to leverage a book, how to write a book. If you're having trouble writing a book, I can help with that. If you go to kevintumlinson.com, you can click on the coaching and consulting button up there. I recommend doing the free 15-minute discovery session where I'll talk to you and figure out what it is you're trying to say, what's your message, what's your goal, and we can figure out how to get you on a writing regimen, a daily writing schedule if that's what you're looking for, or even just a weekly writing schedule. But not only can I help with that, but I can help you with all the other stages of this. In fact, my partner and I, Nick Thacker, whom I mentioned earlier, we have joined forces to form a business called Tumthack Publishing Group. Tumthack is a combination of our last names, Tumlinson and Nick Thacker, or Tumlinson and Thacker. But we thought Tumlinson and Thacker sounded an awful lot like a law firm, so we decided to compress it, and it's a fun name. So, and we have the obvious logo. But if you now we're still developing the website at tumthack.com, but it is there. And here's something that's going on. And I'm stupid excited about this. Like, if you will contact me, and I think you can do it through tumthack.com, but even if you have to go to wordslingerpodcast.com or kevintumlinson.com, they're all pretty much the same at this point. But you can just get in touch with me or call me at 281-809-WORD, 281-809-9673. If you'll do that, I will give you information about the Tumthack Anti-Course. And here's the deal with that. Nick and I have put together a course that will allow us to so we both do the Self-Publishing Answers podcast, which if you're interested in publishing, you should definitely listen to. And we both do author coaching. And the thing is, both of those things have their limitations. In the podcast, we have a broader reach, but we're not able to sort of, zoom in on specific things that someone might need right then and there, the way we can in coaching. But in coaching, because it's one-on-one, it doesn't scale. So we're spending a lot of energy telling one person all these great things, and all these great insights come up because of the questions they ask. But then we want to share that with more people. So we had a great idea, and we've thought about building a course, and we've been working on some courses for a while now. But courses have their limitations too. And one of the things that has always bugged us, like, we've been in some great courses. There are some fantastic courses out there. But they can sometimes be a little expensive. And a lot of times the information is all very, it's well structured and well organized, but that can actually work against you in some ways, because if I come in with a specific question, your well-organized course may not address it. And so there's no room to pivot in there. So Nick and I decided we're going to create the anti-course. We're going to create the course that you help develop. And you do that by signing up, chatting with us. Combined, Nick and I have about 40 years of writing and publishing experience. I've been doing this. I honestly have been writing professionally since I was 12 years old. And the work that I do in this, well, it's gone through its changes. I've learned a lot. In just in the past couple of years that really redefined my career, my business. But I want to be able to help you with that. And Nick has his own vast knowledge, especially on the side, the marketing publishing side, and of that. We both have marketing backgrounds, and we both have publishing backgrounds, and we both have our writing experience to draw from. So we want to help you with that. So if you'll contact me, I wish I had a nice easy URL to send you to. You can try tumthack.com. I'm not sure yet if we have the opt-in for this course on there. But if you just go to wordslingerpodcast.com and contact me there, or call me at 281-809-WORD, 281-809-9673, you can ask me about this, and I will be happy to give you information. The course is under $400 right now. It's going to be a lot more expensive later. We've already figured that out. We got this down to the just bare minimum of what we could afford to give. It's about 6 hours over 3 different meetups. So it's 2 hours per session, 6 hours total, and this is one-on-one time with me and Nick in a group setting. So it's kind of like a mastermind. Okay, so everyone gets to contribute, ask their questions, and we answer the questions live right there on the show, or right there in the course, and all that gets recorded, and you get access to it. And then, to go a little further, we actually come back after the fact, and based on the conversations we had and where we see there's need, we'll create resources and materials that we can send you after each session. So you get the session where you get to ask your questions and have them answered live over 2 hours, 3 times. So there's 3 sessions, 2 hours each, 6 hours total. We would normally charge, we charge like $200 an hour for our coaching right now. And so that's like getting $400 worth of coaching times 2. So $800 worth of coaching for a grand total of, $383.97. And that odd number is there for a reason. That's the bare minimum. Like, we really cut it down as far as we could. If you think you'd have trouble making that all at once, we actually do have a payment plan. It ends up costing you about $20 more, but you can pay it out $133.33 per payment for 3 payments, and there you go. It comes out to about $400, and that will let you participate in the class and keep your budget safe. So this is a great thing, man. We've got a lot of interest in this already, and the slots are going to fill up really fast. I wish I could even tell you. I don't know how many slots are left. I mean, I think we were aiming for like 15 people. We may nudge that depending on response. The thing is, there's a finite amount we can do. There's limitations on the software we'll be using, but there's also limitations on how many people we can focus on at one time, because we want to be able to answer every question, and if we have too many people, we won't be able to do that. So if you will contact me, I'll give you information on that. This is a great course if you want to write for a living, or if you just want to write a book, period, and market it and sell it. This is going to be fantastic. This is your chance, man. And if this is successful, we'll do it again, but the price is going to go up significantly. I mean, maybe a couple of thousand. I mean, because it's very valuable information, and it's custom tailored to you on the spot, and it's a 6-hour commitment on our part for the sessions, but it's going to be more like a 30 to 40 hour commitment per session once it's all said and done, because we're going to spend weeks developing all the materials. So after the fact, customized to that course. So go check that out. We think you'll dig that. This is a great chance for you to connect with me and Nick. Go listen to the Self-Publishing Answers podcast. You'll get kind of a preview of what this is going to be like. But we're really, man, we're just tremendously excited about this. We think we're going to help a lot of people. I'm so looking forward to that. Like, just in my one-on-one coaching, whenever people kind of just click with this, it's amazing. And so to do this for 10 to 15 people at a time, I can only imagine what the energy of that's going to be like. Plus, once the dust settles, I mean, we're going to create a community around the group that participates in this. We've got some really great ideas for that. We're thinking about creating, we've already created it actually, a Slack group that you'll be invited to participate in. We'll have a private Facebook group that you can be in. And that way you get to share your ideas as you learn new things with everyone else, and they share it with you. So what we're doing is building an instant community here, giving you the foundation, and then letting you guys connect with each other and support each other. And I've seen this happen in the past with a group I belong to, and it is amazing. So very helpful. So I know this is going to be fantastic for you. So contact me. Go to wordslingerpodcast.com or call me at 281-809-WORD, 281-809-9673. And you can also check out tumfact.com, and hopefully we're making fast progress on that, but we're actually putting more energy on the stuff that's going to help people rather than the stuff that we need for our website. We'll get there. Bear with us. So thanks so much for tuning in. I'm so happy that you're here. I know that God brought us together. We're gonna do some great work together. I hope you're getting a lot out of the Wordslinger podcast and the people that I talk to. I know I am. This is my mastermind group. I talk to amazing people in this show. So tune in next week. We got another great interview coming up and more to come. So, and if you have questions, email me or call me at 281-809-WORD, 281-809-9673. Take care of yourselves out there. I'll see you next week.
Word Slinger.